Welcome
Woo!
everyone
Happy
to happy
Monday.
Monday indeed. Hopefully you called your mother yesterday because it was Mother's Day. And if not, then you better call her today.
Yeah. Stop what you're doing right
And yeah,
now. Call
pause
her.
this, go call your mom and come back.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll wait for you.
we'll wait for
No.
you.
No, we
No, we
won't.
won't.
We won't wait for you.
Welcome. This is the Dungeon Cooldown. We are your co-DMs, Ron Ogden.
And Jared Kajak.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? Before we get started, I want to send a thank you to everyone who showed up this morning, afternoon, whatever it is. And also thank you to all of our patrons, because without all of you, none of this would exist. So thank you so much for contributing and helping us bring you ever more entertaining content.
Yeah,
So,
in fact, we're going to be doing more and more of this leading up to when we finally launch season 2. So
indeed.
you get to be involved in the before times.
The before times.
Yeah.
Jared, I want to talk a little bit about starting out before we get into any questions or talking to the audience. Dude, we had Ed Greenwood on the show.
I know. It took me a good couple of days to kind of come down off of that high. If
Man,
anybody that watches this, if anybody that's out there right now hasn't seen the Ed Greenwood interview, it was mwah.
so
It
good.
was it was like a delicious beer after lots of manual labor done outside.
It was like it was like being in the Seattle countryside and breathing fresh air. That's what it was
Oh
like.
yeah. When you first get off the airport, this is for everyone that's never been to the Pacific Northwest. When you first get off the airplane at the airport in Seattle, and if you've been living in a place like Los Angeles, especially if you're in the valley, breathing in all this delicious smog, you you literally get a high when you get off of the plane because you get blasted with so much clean air and oxygen. It you feel like you just had a cup of coffee. Yeah. Yeah, the interview was awesome. For those of you that were there, you know. We don't have to tell you. I will say this though. Ron and I talked quite a bit after the interview in the last, week or so. And the little thing that Ed did with us where we were like, "Hey, help us create a magical item."
Yeah.
And again, Morgan, Jessica, and Katie, if you're watching this,
Stop.
don't watch. Just don't. Because there's so many spoilers. Um, the little thing that he did with us where we created that magical item, and it was so small. Like we didn't even give him anything to really work off of. We just said, "This is the North Island, this is the South Island. What do you think?" And he came up with something on the fly. It was a relic, a magical item for those of you that missed it. And the magical item is either a skull or skull with teeth or hair of either a god or an avatar of a god. We don't want to give away too much. But that item that's on the North Island is scattered about, possibly carried by clerics to different places on the island. You'll find out. Long story short, that little piece that he gave us, and then the fact that what it did was it was almost like a conduit for misdirection. So the south part of the island, even though they have more technology and they're definitely more in tune with arcane magic, they can't pierce the misdirection or the fog that that relic creates. The other thing that he kind of tacked on, which was like the little, cherry on top, or like, if you're in a fancy French restaurant when they put the sherry across the top and light it on fire and it flambés everything. Uh, the little nugget that he gave towards the end, where because the pieces have been scattered or spread about, the more pieces that are brought together, the more powerful it becomes, was also chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Yeah. So off of that little thing that he gave us, Ron and I were able to not only connect it to the world that we've already created and the story that we've already started to create in our minds, but also it helped us connect how the player characters are going to be directly involved in the building of that story. It connected all of the pieces. It was almost like he laid the web down on top of all of the pieces that we had kind of floating about. It was like we had a bunch of awesome ideas and thoughts and like little
Floating.
flies and
Floating
moths
without any kind
floating
of
around.
connections. Yeah.
He put up the web, and then we stuck all of the ideas to that web.
Yeah, these all fit together. It was like
Yeah.
the perfect source material in an improv show. It's like when you ask the
Totally.
audience to give you, hey, we need a word. What is something you enjoy? And they give you that great word where you're like, I never would have thought that. Yeah, like, oh God, not Godzilla again. But they give you something like contemporary, and you're like, that I can do something with that. That I can do a lot with. It was very much what Ed gave us. It was something that we could create off of and really use it as a source to make the world even better.
Yeah. So long story short, Ed Greenwood is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Thumbs up. And he's going to come back for sure.
Yep.
For sure. At a later date, because we want to save his magic for later on, because he's probably going to give us another golden nugget that we're going to inject into the thing. Maybe he'll be a player character. Who knows? If Ed Greenwood wants to come down here from Canada, we will put him in the show.
Let's not daydream and let's not make fantasies. Let's not tease Ron with possibilities that are not actually possible.
Dress him up like Santa Claus and bring him down for the holiday show. Since he's done Santa Claus, according to his bio.
Yep.
Yeah. Not only that, but he also gave us some suggestions for possible guests for future shows. So
Yes.
the man is a legend already in my book, and he lived up to that expectation.
Yeah, it's when I don't know about you, Jared, but I've experienced in life where I've met some of my idols or heroes, and it was like, oh, that's what it's like to see them die. Well, that's great. This is one of the very few that I met. I was like, okay. Lived up to expectation. Now, whether that says anything about my idols or heroes, or whether I put things on pedestals up for debate, but just I've had a lot of my heroes just be like, okay, they're not really my heroes.
Yeah. Great on screen,
great on paper,
not so much in real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not so much.
Although Liam Neeson is a genuinely beautiful man. Like, he is incredibly nice and kind, and I mean, I can't say enough nice things about
I've been
him.
watching the latest season of Atlanta, so he was recently in one of those, and it did not go so well. But I know I've heard that he is very much a very kind,
he's so nice.
person. Yeah,
Everybody talks about how nice Keanu Reeves is, and I'm like, man, Liam Neeson gives him a run for his money. Dude's nice.
Dude is an amazing actor too.
But it's just funny to me because all of his characters are like, I know where you live, and if you don't return my daughter, then I don't know why I sound like Whitebeard all of a sudden.
I don't know.
But he plays a lot of bad guys, or he plays a lot of men that are harsh, we'll say. But he's in real life super nice.
Your bad impression of a Whitebeard Liam Neeson is a great way to get to our our questions that we do have.
Yes.
And there's one on Patreon from Gateway Guy. One of the questions they ask is, when players encounter a lesser used NPC weeks or months or even years after they spoke with them in real life, how the heck do you keep track of personalities and voices to keep the world consistent? One of the ones that I love to use is bad impressions of someone that of a character, of an actor, of those kind of things, because if I want an ogre or some sort of physically demanding person, Arnold is my go-to for that kind of person. Like, come on, will you fight me? You want to fight me? I will fight you. I'll take you down the road and we will do this. Now do what I say, or I'm going to get the count on you. So that kind of stuff is, I'm using something that I can easily recall for a character. So I'm slotting that for that particular individual. Now, obviously, that is my ridiculous indication to give you to prove the point. But you can turn it up or down. It's a dial for me. It's like increase the bad if you want it to be funny, and try to make it a little less a bad impression if you want to increase drama or have it be taken seriously.
Yeah.
So that's one of my tools that I use.
Yeah. No, that's a great one. Impersonations, whether they're bad or good, are always helpful. So a little tip that I have for anybody thinking of running a game, especially a game where they have a ton of NPCs, is what I do at the beginning of the first session, or even if you're 5 sessions in, is I'll have a notepad, just a basic notepad, and I will create, or I'll go to a name generator if I don't have time. I'll create a list of 10, 20, 30 names max, that I have not assigned to anyone. I'll have my major NPCs. So let's say there's the, like you just did Arnold Schwarzenegger. Let's say there's a barbarian that they're for sure going to run into, and they're for sure going to interact with. And maybe that barbarian's even going to travel with them for a while and be a hireling or what have you. Or maybe they're going to fight that barbarian. Who knows? So there's those NPCs or possible monsters or conflict that are going to happen. Those you flesh out ahead of time. Those are the ones that are your key bullet points. Those are the ones that are going to tie into your narrative that you're telling. The sheet that has the list of names, and the names can be literally pulled from a name generator, and you can do, 5 silly names, or 5 goblin-y names, or 5 Norse names, or 5 elven names. Break it up. Don't do like 20 goofy names, because then you're stuck with, what was it? Butt Fuzz McGee. Yeah, as your high level cleric that they're going to, hoping that Butt Fuzz McGee is going to be able to revivify their fallen rogue. Anyways, you have that list of names handy, and I've broken Ron already. So
just Butt Fuzz McGee is a paladin who can revivify. I would like to call upon the powers of Lysander and the sun to rise this character, bring them back to their family and friends by the name of me, Buttface McGee.
Buttface?
Buttface. I changed
McGee.
it. Buckface
That's
McGee.
Even better.
Buttfuzz McGee.
I like that. No, I like that better. Buttface.
Sorry. I just had to. I had to do that.
It's fine. So you have that list of names, and you don't have any information next to it at all. That's your I need a shopkeeper.
I need a name.
That's the they just ran into a group of peasants. That's the this rogue is going through an existential crisis and wants to go to a temple that I haven't created, and there needs to be a priest in that temple for them to talk to. I'm going to do Chalmers. And then you just go with it. Now, the name, I feel like there's power in names. I really do.
Yes, agreed.
And I spend a lot of time trying to come up with names for my character that I'm going to be playing for a long period of time.
If I could interject, a lot of
yeah.
time to name things in general.
Yeah.
Like
totally.
2 islands of a map, for example.
Yeah.
The amount of time that Jared spent in the names is incredible. I mean, honestly, it is, because when he started doing it, I was like, oh, all right, I get it. You're trying to build more of a like, well, this name has a power to it, so now it gives us something to work with when we go there. So I appreciate it. For me, it was like, I'm a little different. I'm like, slap a name down, because people don't remember the names of things. In this case, it's gonna be a little different, but.
That's very true. Yeah, no, you're right, because player characters don't always take notes, and they forget.
Correct.
Yeah, so all of this is to say, to go back to Ron's original point and the original question, is if you have that list of names and you don't have to think about it, but you know that they're going to go in and talk to that high level cleric, or you don't know that they're going to do it, they surprise you. If there's a name on there, that strikes something in your brain, go with that name. So I need a shopkeeper, and I have Talbot on my sheet. That to me, for whatever reason, immediately makes me think shopkeeper. And Talbot sounds like someone that is maybe, and this is just me riffing, sounds like he's a little bit older. Sounds like he's probably human, although that could be, he could be, maybe he's a half race, like maybe he's half orc or something like that.
Half elf.
Yeah, sounds like he's if we're going the merchant route, maybe he is actually a crafter as well. So half the things that he's selling, he's actually making. I see him in a dirty smock. I see him, if let's say he's half orc, maybe he's got one tusk that sticks out, and that could affect how he talks. And if he's older, maybe he's gray at the temple, or he's balding. So he's seen some things, and he's got some experience. Maybe he knows a little bit about the town too, in addition. And because he's a crafter and he's a woodworker, maybe he's got sawdust on his smock or his apron, or maybe he's always working on something whenever you walk into the shop.
He's got black smudges across his face where he's been rubbing the sweat off his brow, or
yeah,
those
he's dirty. He's dirty. He gets dirty, but it's not dirty in a sense to where like
he's a person working with his hands.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and his hands. That's another great descriptor. You can see that his hands are well worn and they're calloused, and he doesn't shy away from his upbringing and who he is, and he's blunt. And he doesn't really necessarily like to haggle over price. Like, the price is the price.
And if he has to, he gets a little frustrated with the situation because it's an annoyance.
Exactly. Yeah. And if one of the characters attempts to steal something, that's justice. I mean, you're done. You're done at that point in Talbot's eyes, because he's a very, high level of tolerance, but once you snap that level of tolerance, it's game over. Yeah. And he just happens to be drinking buddies with the local law. So if you do try to steal from him, he's just going to take you down. Yeah, he'll just take, and his word is just as good as if it was a deputy that you were, what have you. And that's Talbot. And that all just came out of the blue from a name and the fact that I needed a shopkeeper. But I had my handy list of names right here by my side to start that process. And the more you do that, the more you do that exercise in your brain, the easier it gets. And it's something that you can do when you're not even running a game. Yeah. So that's my tip or my trick. And that's something that's worked for me for years, let alone if you are watching a movie or playing a video game and you come across especially some of these open world games, you come across a character that you find interesting or intriguing, or that you think you might be able to impersonate. That's a stock NPC right there. That might be a stock villain that you need, like a midway villain that the player characters encounter on their way to go and fight the big evil sorcerer.
I think that gets back to another thing about, there's a book called The Best Artists Steal, quote unquote. And it's just the idea that, like, there are certain aesthetics in art, there are certain things that are always going to draw an eye. And so those become standardizations or things that artists rely on as a general way to communicate concepts or emotions, like red as the color of anger. Those kind of things is kind of what I'm talking about. So you can do that in writing as well, right? Like we talk about tropes. Tropes is a great way to do things, especially like if you want to create. I love the idea that you have separate name that is just, or separate list that is just names, that they're not attached to particular types or character types. I love that. In addition, things that I like to do is have just generic characters that have fleshed out flaws but have no names, and so that you can just pick them and choose them as you need. Oh, I need a guard right now, so I'm going to take a strong man that I've set aside. Or I want a strong man, I want a wise, an intelligent, slightly evil person, and I want someone who's dexterous and also just goes with the flow. So that there are a lot of ways to build lists like that you can grab from, especially if you struggle with doing it on the fly.
So This is when NPCs become tricky for me, because the creating the NPC on the fly or having the stock NPCs ready to go isn't tricky. What's tricky, I think, is if you then need to know like a stat block
Yeah.
for that NPC,
Right.
or if you need to know what they're carrying or what they have for sale in their shop or what services they can offer if they're in a temple and what have you. So that's a question that I would love to throw at you, Ron, because that is something that I've struggled with, and I've gotten better, but that's something that I've struggled with. Where how do you handle that? Like, how do you handle, if Talbot, if that becomes a fight for whatever reason, even if it's not the player character's fault, something happens and there's something breaks out, um, and you need to know Talbot's stats. How do you quickly solve that situation?
Well, D&D does a lot of cool things, especially with D&D Beyond, where you can just have generic mages or generic warriors or generic where they're like leveled for a particular type. Typically what I do is kind of what I was explaining before, is I have like a list of characters set aside that function that way. Typically I just use standard point buy for their stats. I try to keep it that only major NPCs that I'm doing work on that might be antagonistic to other characters would have rolled stats rather than just point buy.
Right.
And for me, that's because I want the characters and the people that they face that are the BBEGs or their antagonists or all that kind of stuff feel super heroic compared to the rest of the individuals they run into. So
Yeah.
that's just my choice on that. But the hardest one is, what are they carrying right now? That's
Sure.
the hardest one, I really think,
Yeah.
especially when you go, okay, well, they also went about their day. So do they have everything that they ever owned on them,
Yeah.
or is half
Does
of it
the
back at their
priest always
place?
carry a
Right,
healing potion
right,
even when they're like at the
right.
pub?
Like, are they just randomly a healing potion on their side?
Yeah.
Some of that is, I think you're going to
Oh
have to
man, I got
make
so
that name
drunk
on the
last
fly.
night. I drank all my healing potions. I didn't know what I didn't know what I was
I got
doing.
really drunk, and the last thing I drank was the healing potion, which made me not drunk anymore. So then I had to
Oh, it
re-drink
was an
everything.
antitoxin.
Yeah. It was a lesser restoration.
There you go. There you go.
So
Wasted. What is that? Like 500 gold pieces? You just blew it.
So there are a lot of options for that, right? Some people want that level of detail. For me, it's like, unless they're going somewhere for a particular, they have a little bit of money on them so that they can do a thing, and they have
Yeah.
maybe something on them to keep them protected, a dagger, and maybe not, depending on where you're at. So a lot of that is, for me,
Yeah,
on
because
the
if you're in a
fly
major
call.
city and there isn't a lot of crime,
Right.
then they might not have more than a
Right.
dagger. But a dagger can also be used to eat with, so it
Right.
makes sense
But it's
to,
also one of those things that they all of a sudden get into a fight with that person and they start to loot the area and them. Well, then I'm going to be probably rolling on some sort of table that I've set up to make sure that you get at least a fair representation of what might be there. But that's secondary information. That's great. And we're going to handle that. But what's really important is, well, what does all of that mean that you just did?
Yeah, for the story,
For the story. So we'll get to the details and the nitty gritty of that. But what's really important is, like, okay, you just took all that guy's stuff. You think he's just going to let that happen? And if you had to knock him out or kill him in order to do that, do you think no one's going to have noticed? Or, so it becomes about that kind of stuff where the details become a little less important if you are, like, I don't think that the first thing that happens when somebody robs a bank is, I'm going to check everyone's pockets. Right? There's a lot of anxiety in that kind of situation, I'm sure. Even the person who's prepped themselves for a bank robbery, for example. I imagine there's still a lot of anxiety. And I don't know if, when I have anxiety, the details get blurred real quick. Like, they go out the window. Because you're not really worried about necessarily all these specific, unless you're hyper focused on that one thing, and then all of the details are important. So for me, I try to do that kind of stuff where it's like, well, if the character and the situation indicates to me that it's important that all of these details be determined right now, then I will spend time to do that in the moment to make sure it's declared. But prior to that, it's going to be like, well, he's got a dagger. I know generally he's got dagger and a coin purse, because that's mostly what they might be. The time will allow them to look.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So Music Man 77, do you rule healing potions to be expensive to avoid PCs stocking up easily? Here's the deal. The thing that I always ask myself when player characters are in a town or in a city or in a place where they could actually buy anything, any kind of gear or healing potion, I ask myself, how rare is that item in that area, or how common? How prevalent is it? And how valuable is it in that area? If you're in a major city where there's lots of people creating potions, that will probably drive the price down. Or if you're in an area where a antitoxin or a poison removal or a healing potion would be huge or really rare, all of a sudden it drives the price back up. And so I think if you just look at it from like I can't believe I'm going to say this, but like a capitalistic mindset.
No, I mean, yeah.
That'll help you, Music Man, when you're running a game, to decide whether or not healing potions are even available. And if they are available, how much they would realistically cost. And I always give a range because I want the skill of the player character to come into effect as to whether or not the price is high or low. And that's why skills, I feel, are sometimes overlooked in 5th edition games. Like,
Yes.
You should be able to affect the price of something based off of how good you are at negotiating.
It is my
or what you
opinion.
have to haggle with.
It is my opinion that a good session is that you rolled more skill checks than you did attacks.
Sure.
I like
especially if it's RP heavy. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, especially for RP heavy play.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be relying more on your skills than you are necessarily flipping a blade or stabbing someone. Because those things are very, very, combat is a very specific thing. Now D&D gets into the point where people go like, oh, combat after combat after combat after combat, which is where we get into like, well, are we murder hobos, or are we like actually role playing,
Right.
or what are we doing here? So
Yeah.
I'm with you in that skills don't get enough, especially the social skills, because people are
Yeah.
like, oh, we should just social that out. I'm like, yeah, but like Ron's a confident person, but maybe this person I'm playing is not. And so
Yeah.
like Ron could convince you of a thing that this character probably could not. And so
Yeah.
like I would like that to be reflective of the roles. Like I want my not so
Yeah,
good
you
at
still-
social
yeah.
structures to try to do that and fail, because that's the interesting
For
thing.
sure. You still RP everything out.
Yeah.
That you never skip over that.
Right.
Never.
For sure.
Yeah.
For
but unless it's just like a time situation where
Right.
you don't have time to RP them going shopping to every single
Right.
merchant in the town.
Right.
Or that's just not super important to
Again,
your
role
story.
playing important areas, right? Like
Yeah,
those things.
but I do feel that using those skills for those situations is important, because there are classes out there where that's a huge part of that class, and you don't want to shortchange anyone.
Right.
If one person's character is all about fighting and combat and their social skills are terrible, and another person's character's social skills are through the roof and their spells that deal with social situations are through the roof and their combat is just sort of okay, you're really, I mean, that's a tricky situation to be in as a dungeon master, but you're really hurting one person if you only focus on one side or the other. And that's where I feel like the balance comes in. And deciding ahead of time what kind of game everybody wants to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, that's a great JT Justice asked questions of opinions on crafting and how it needs to be improved. And I think that touches a little bit on like how people want to play. You know what I mean? I love Xanathar's
crafting and 5th edition D&D is rough.
Have you read the Xanathar guide indication?
I mean, I've
Xanathar's
yeah. I just feel like
Dungeon a little bit.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
That was what I was going to talk about. Is like, base crafting is basically very confusing, because it's like you have skills that you're proficient with, but then you can also get these tools. Well, what's the skill that goes with the tool? Oh, no, the tool is the skill. And I'm like, but that's not how that works. Okay, that's sure. So anyone who knows how to use brewing is good at brewing. And it's like, well, no, that's not how. Okay.
Yeah.
So for me,
Or I know how brewing works, but
Right.
if I ever tried to do it myself,
Right.
it would be terrible.
But a terrible thing. Exactly. Difference between knowledge of the thing and the application of the thing. And I think there's maybe where 5e got a little off, because you have arcane knowledges, but then your arcane knowledge isn't in base rule set tied to anything that you might use, like cartography, for example, or magic item creation in any. I'm a jewel crafter. Well, but my knowledge in arcana should probably make the fact that I have that, I'm a better jewel crafter. Like, I mean, just generally, right? Crystals and all that kind of stuff.
Especially if you're dealing with a magical jewel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's some fleshing of that done in Xanathar's Guide, but again, that is the purchased set. That's not the basic rule set, so I totally get that. For me, it's more of like, I want there to be like similar to other games where there's like, okay, this one I made is really crappy because it's the first one I made, but this 300th one I made is a masterwork, and it doesn't even need to be magical, and it's better.
Yeah, I remember when you first started printing minis from your 3D printer compared to now.
Yeah,
where the stuff that you print now is just like
night and day.
It's gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. Yeah. And the early stuff was still cool, but it was like, basic stuff, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I can get really complex and crazy loops and stuff that before I couldn't, because I didn't have the technical knowledge and I just needed to do it a bunch. So I had the technical knowledge, I just didn't have the experience within a resin medium. So that helped. Having the again, that's a perfect example. Exactly. I had the technical knowledge prior from building computers and understanding how light works and how these particular things work. But until I actually applied all of that knowledge in a real physical way, did I start to get better at what I was doing. And I think that would be really great to somehow inhabit inside of the D&D rule set, for sure.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's really up to your dungeon master and your players how much energy and time you want to spend on crafting. I find it horribly interesting. Like I love it. I think it's again another one of those overlooked portions of Dungeons and Dragons. They're so busy churning out all these settings, and I'm like, well, you guys haven't even necessarily fleshed out everything for one setting. Yeah.
Right.
So it would be lovely to see some of that stuff. What I would recommend is there are a lot of great books for 3rd edition and 2nd edition D&D that do talk about these topics. Granted, their systems that are in there are for those older editions of D&D, but you could probably very easily transition those same crafting systems into 5th edition, or at least get some ideas on how to flesh out what 5th edition has to offer thus far. That would be my recommendation. And I definitely think that giving your player characters downtime in a campaign is huge. Because you can find out a lot about who your player characters are and where the players want those player characters to develop and grow by giving them that downtime and plan it out. Say, hey guys, after this session, you're going to have a week where nothing's going to happen, or you're going to just be able to do whatever it is that you think your character is going to do. And we're not necessarily going to RP every little facet of that, but you're going to have that week. What would your wizard do? What would your fighter do? What would your rogue do? And then give them some roles and then let them know, okay, you succeeded in making that spell scroll, or you succeeded in stealing something from that shop, and now you have this item.
Based on where you're at, here are your options for downtime during this week or two, and make your choices, and then we will have there be consequences for those choices, when you get back into the role play and stuff like that. And 5e is very good about giving you some ideas and rules on what to do with that, especially in Xanathar's Guide. A lot of the especially extended things that you want to do as a DM, the parts that need more fleshing out that weren't given in the DMG are done in Xanathar's Guide. So highly suggest you guys check that out. But again, the beautiful part about 5e is that there's a lot of homebrew available, as you've seen with the stuff that we're bringing towards to season 2 that'll be dropping on the Patreon very soon. homebrew is allowed, and there's some great things that you can do to flesh out the stories that you and your DM really want to have told. So, things like Drive Through RPG or the Dungeon Masters Guild. These are really great places to find other individuals who are writing similar things that want to solve them in unique ways that might fit with your campaign. So
Sure.
that's another thing that I have said multiple times as we talked about Revenge of the Lazy Dungeon Master with Sly Flourish that we're using for, as a focus for the way that we DM for this campaign, but as well as the books that I've shown that we use. There are a variety. The beautiful part is we live in the golden age of D&D, in which there are a plethora of places for you to go to find great advice or fleshed out ideas that even then those you can make fit for your campaign. That's the beauty of homebrew.
Yeah. And there's a lot of great YouTubers out there as well, to where if you are looking for ideas or concepts on how to flesh out a part of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition that you think is lacking, there are great videos out there that will steer you in the right direction as well. And, by all means, reach out to us. Like Ron and I are very active on Discord and our Patreon. So if there's ever a question or something that you have for us specifically about a specific situation or issue, message us and we'll get to it. Or we'll bring it up on the show, and that'd be great material for, future arcane artistry. Yeah,
indeed. And there'll be more and more of those as we get closer and closer to season 2's debut. There'll be more options for you to interact. That's kind of what Jared and I are really working on, is how can we make this interactable more than it's already been? And how can we have it be that your interactions matter in the world even more than they did before?
Yeah, we're definitely going to be revamping Force of Good, Force of Evil stuff for sure. Indeed, and there's going to be more options besides. There's going to be more options besides just balloons, advantages, disadvantages, and what have you. Yeah, that's all going to change with season 2. It might not change all at the beginning, but over time, we'll figure out what works. Right. Yeah.
And that's, I think, in general, that's a really good way to structure your thoughts about the new season, is we're trying to do whatever we can to level it up. To step up the game as best we can. That was kind of that was kind of what Jeff made very clear he would like when he left. So we are answering that call and doing the best we can. So I think maybe you have seen a little bit of that so far with us, sharing some things with you and being able to create with Ed and with all of you in the channel. So I hope you guys are enjoying that.
Slime Town. We got to talk about Slime Town.
Oh, God, Slime Town.
So, the Carson, guys, I have a question about ending a one-shot with characters specifically made for that adventure. Oh, by the way, before we get into this question, Ron and I are going to be creating at least one NPC today during this stream with your help. So stay tuned. We're going to show you how to create an NPC, maybe more than one NPC. And that NPC might even make an appearance in season 2. Ooh. Going back to the question, Carson, guys, I have a question about ending a one-shot with characters specifically made for that adventure. Since there is really no way to give a permanent reward, would you say an ending that could lead to another small adventure would be good? The positive aftermath of a successful battle? What do you prefer? Ron, I'll let you take a swing at that first.
I usually do the first part, which is the ending suggests that there's more to the story, or there's another one shot that could be used off of that. I also like one shots using new characters where the reward is when they're done with the one shot, it's related to the full campaign that we're playing.
Yeah,
that's a good reward.
That's huge.
But you need people that is playing a regular campaign, at least a few of them, to be in the one shot that you're playing. So that requires but that's a really good one. But and then JT Justice, that's where I was about to go. JT Justice is another thing to do is, if you're playing in a campaign, I often take their characters and make them NPCs as well. In some cases, especially if they're very good characters that they fleshed out early on. So
I also like to reward whether they're doing a one shot here and then another one shot here, or if they're doing a one shot and then there's also a main campaign, I don't mind if certain things carry over. Like I've had people play a one shot character where they acquired something, a potion that they never used, a spell that they never got to cast, and then they make a new character. And if it makes sense, I go, hey, do you want to transfer that item over to this other character?
Cool.
Because you earned it.
Yeah, that's cool.
You earned it in that game. You never got to use it. How about this new character? As long as it, doesn't do anything weird, like for the balance of the game.
sure.
Like if you were a 10th level character and you got some amazing magical sword, you're not going to give that to a first level character in another one shot, as long as it transfers over. But you could still dumb down the magical sword. They could start with something. It's almost like if you're playing a video game and you have a character in that game, and then you start a new game, can you transfer that character to that new game, or any of those items to that new character?
Right.
Yeah. So I think that can be a reward as well.
And making their characters central to the story of the one shot is also, even though you're telling it, a separate story, still making the characters that they created central to that, I think is going to be a reward in itself, especially if you get to the end of it. So that goes back to Revenge of the Lazy Dungeon Master, where if you're basing your stories around your characters' backstories, then that's all reward the whole time. So I highly suggest that kind of thing, is make sure that your one shots are still tied to the back stories of your characters. And I think you saw that especially in a town called Ricochet, where I had taken literally the backstories that fit so well in what I was doing already that it was easy for me to tell that story. So but yeah. Jared, we are getting close to the end, so we probably want to.
Oh yeah! Wow, time flew.
It did.
So a couple of notes, more tips and tricks as far as creating NPCs. If you have a D&D Beyond account, or if you don't have a D&D Beyond account but you have the majority of the books, there are sections in the Dungeon Master's Guide and other places that will help you create NPCs if you're struggling with that. Those templates, or those, how do you call them? Charts, usually have a list of certain things. And this, again, we're talking the basics here, and Ron and I can get into more detail in a bit. But some of these charts that they have are like, what is an attribute that they have based off of their stats? So if they're low intelligence, does that mean they're dumb, or do they sound dumb when they talk? If they have a high intelligence, are they super educated sounding? Like, are they very articulate in what they say and the words that they choose to use? What kind of talents might they have? Are they incredibly good at painting? Whether they're low intelligence or high intelligence doesn't matter. They might be an amazing painter. Mm-hmm. And that could be something that totally informs who that NPC is, how they dress, how they talk, how they act. This is a big one. Mannerisms. Mm-hmm. So is there a physical mannerism that goes along with the character? If they're nervous, do they chew on their fingernail? When they get really nervous, do they speak very loudly? Are they just one of those high-strung people? Do they whisper? Are they a very close talker?
Do they not?
Are they very, secretive, and
maybe they don't enunciate their words all that much?
Yeah,
they just talk like this a little bit.
Yeah. Do they pace? Do they, twirl their hair? Like, there's any number of mannerisms that. And the thing that's nice about that is, from an improv mindset, is that physical mannerism will probably affect your performance as a dungeon master. So you don't have to do a voice if you're constantly twirling your hair. Or maybe you'll just naturally start doing a voice because you're doing that physical activity and it triggers something in the performance of the character. And then when you go back and you haven't seen that NPC for 10 sessions, and they go back and they want to talk to that same NPC, you start twirling your hair, whether it's imaginary or real, that's going to trigger that part of your brain again. And it'll make it easier for you to drop back into that character. There's interaction traits. Are they rude? Are they polite? Are they hot-tempered? Are they arrogant? There's also a whole section when you create a character in D&D, when you're creating your own character, where you talk about ideals and flaws and bonds. That can be huge. A person, an NPC that has a pet with them, let's say it's a dog or a cat, you immediately know so much about that character just by the fact that they have that pet, that they have that creature with them. How well do they treat that creature? Are they mean? Are they abusive? Are they incredibly nice? Do they talk to that creature as if it understands them? Does it understand them? Like my mind immediately explodes when it comes to a person that has a critter or an animal with them, whether it's some big magical beast or, a simple domesticated dog.
I would like there to be a D&D version of what White Wolf does with their bonds and flaws, where you get small benefits for the specific bonds and flaws, and they come in different levels. So like if you choose a really debilitating flaw, you get some benefit for it. I like that kind of alternative play. Would love to play with that at some point in D&D for sure.
Yeah. It encourages people to have flaws.
Yeah, correct. It encourages people to have flaws, which is perfect, right? It's a way to get around the, well, I don't want to be flawed. Well, yeah, you do. You want to be flawed because you get
everyone is flawed. Everyone is flawed.
It's like, right. Let's just do it realistically where we all have flaws. All right, so we should get into the NPC creation, otherwise we're going to be here forever. So
yes. So we need your help, chat. We would like to create an NPC for the North Island, and if we have time, an NPC for the South Island. Now, what do we know about the North Island and what do we know about the South Island? Let's start with the North. So the North is elemental, raw, primal energy, and it's rough and it's not well populated. And there's a lot going on there when it comes to the weather. It's a harsh place to live and to survive. We also know that there's animal races there, and we know that there's demi-humans there, not a ton of humans. So what is something that pops into your mind, an NPC that the player characters would realistically probably run into at some point in that type of environment? Right now I have Shaman King. I like something like a shaman, a powerful spellcaster. I don't know. A Beastmaster. Beastmaster is good because there's, that's cool. A character like Puck from Midsummer Night's Dream. Okay, so like when you say Puck, do you mean a satyr or do you mean the personality of Puck? Because those are two very different things. We could do a satyr that acts like Puck, for sure, or we could do a satyr that acts like something else, or a puckish character that isn't a satyr. Yeah. Or those could be two separate NPCs. So you literally just came up with two NPCs, Idaho Judd, in like 2 seconds right there.
Personality,
just a hermit in the woods. Yeah. Okay. Troublemaker, pickpocket. I like that. Ron, are any of these really screaming out to you?
I love shamans. I love the shaman concept.
Sure.
I also like that there's a shaman who's a troublemaker.
Okay. I like that. Okay. So I need to write this down because I'm going to forget. So we have a shaman. This is a North Island character, by the way. So North Island shaman. And we can define that a little bit further. And they're a troublemaker. So what kind of trouble? And it's interesting that we're right now we're starting with broad sweeping strokes, generalizations, but it's interesting that we're already tacking on personality, and we haven't even gotten to what they physically look like.
There's a lot of different troublemakers in the world, right? There's different ways and different varying degrees of troublemaker too. Like, so I think that's still a general sweep, but it gives us a little bit of a specific to go down. Do we want to flesh out all of North, or do we want to like now get general sweep of South and then go back to?
Oh
North?
no, I know. I think we can do a little bit more of
Cool.
the North NPC
Great.
and then
Perfect.
and switch. So right now, if we have Shaman and we have Troublemaker, something that I think might help a lot, chat, is if we come up with either a race for this character or a general age for this character, because shamans don't necessarily have to be old. We can play against the stereotype if we want. So if somebody wants to throw a race,
the Northern Islands' pure primal power and divinity would mean there would be young shamans.
Yeah, multiple shamans. I think a shaman is a good choice because they're going to be everywhere. Yeah. So halfling, I got halfling, the Ramhita.
That's very specific. A halfling druid with a pack of Compassaurus that has a vendetta against a necromancer. That's very, very specific.
Okay.
Unknown Axiom says ram person, which we talk about. Those are the Ramhidi in our world, in our northern island, the Ramhidi.
We can do that. We can do that.
Ursaka is our bear person. Our bear people are called the Ursaka.
I'm seeing lots of votes for Ram, so I'm going to do Ramhidi.
Well, and we also know about the Ramhidi that they are very druidic, so a shaman definitely fits in.
Yeah. So since we're going to Ramhidi, we know that they're a spiritual people. We also know that generally they are relatively pacifistic. They're pretty peaceful race for the most part. That being said, this is a troublemaker. Mm-hmm. So chat, I'd like you to tell me or vote, do you want this to be a peaceful Ramhidi, or is this the outlier? Is this to the shaman that's like, no, I don't think we should be peaceful anymore, or I don't believe in that, or that's not working for us? Your bear person race, Ram, they butt heads though. A stubborn young shaman that is fighting against the path they are supposed to take by acting out. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot, Dasmir. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're saying young.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Which makes sense that he would be an outlier if he's young, right?
Yep. Yeah, so that's why he's a troublemaker.
Right.
He's an outlier. Right. He's like, I don't know if I believe in this peaceful...
He's pushing against the status quo of the peaceability of their race.
Okay.
You get pushed around.
I vote peace is overrated. Y'all have been hanging out with Civ for too long. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Welcome, Raiders! We are creating an NPC for our new season.
Yeah.
So please, if you have some ideas, we're gathering them currently. Where are we now, Jared?
Right now, we have a shaman. We have that they're a troublemaker and that they're an outlier because they don't follow the way of peace. They are Ramhidi, so they are a sheep, mountain sheep race that Ron and I have homebrewed. And this particular shaman is young. It is not an elderly sage shaman. That's all we have right now.
Well, we know of the Ramhidi, so you can use it as, generally speaking, they are a peaceful druidic style race that revolve around one leader of a herd, known as a shepherd. So this individual, we've also talked about that there are shepherds that might leave their herds to become shepherds of their own. So I imagine this Ramhidi is probably that kind of Ramhidi, left their herd to become their own shepherd.
Right. Or if they're still young, maybe they're causing problems within their herd. And
could even be that they don't even want to have the herd idea. Maybe they're rejecting the herd idea, and that's the troublemaker bit. There's a lot of room there.
So something that I think would be interesting for this character is, since we've done a lot of the emotional, generalized stuff, I would love to have a physical attribute for this character. Whether that's a mannerism or an actual physical attribute, that something that that makes them stick out to where
some identifying mannerism or feature.
Exactly. Correct. So give me some ideas, Chad.
Yeah, that's what we need. Identifying mannerisms or features. One horn. Yeah, broken horn easily comes as one of the early ones, right? One horn sort of broken.
Broken horn, one horn. Okay.
Fail Waffle says make them hot.
He can have a high charisma.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we want to give him a high charisma?
Let's give him a high charisma. Well done,
Okay.
Phil Waffle. High charisma.
Broken horn. Broken or lost horn, I'm going to say.
Ooh, Adventures Pack says maybe one eye is glazed over, so you can have the horn broken and the eye, and it could be some major injury that they've had that's related to the reason why they don't.
Sure. Some kind of like violent trauma, and that's one of the reasons why the Way of Peace isn't something that I love that. I love that. So an injury, maybe to the face or the head.
Right.
And that could have been their backstory. Like that's one of the reasons why they're saying, I don't believe in this.
Yeah, major injuries definitely have an influence on who you become as a person. Absolutely.
Yeah. I love the idea that he's not necessarily physically super attractive because he's got this scar, but he still has a high charisma. So he must be really well spoken, right?
Well spoken and strong, relatable ideas.
Right.
So though he might be a troublemaker, he can still convince you that, hot food is good, for example.
Yeah, I mean, he makes good points.
Right.
It's a harsh landscape, and he's making good points. Hey, maybe we shouldn't be so peaceful. Maybe we should fight back.
Yep. Maybe we should take more resource than we are designed. Yep.
Okay, this is coming along great. I'm pretty happy with this.
Cool.
I really picture this guy at this point. So one thing that is always hard to do is to name NPCs. Now, what I would like to do, instead of throwing out a bunch of names in chat, is I want you guys to ruminate, think about this, and then we'll come back after we create the South Island dude real quick, or dudette. And then you can throw out your name ideas, and we'll pick one of those names. And then that way, when the player characters will run into this character, you'll know you made him.
Now, the South Island is very technologically and and advanced, both in technology, knowledge, civilization, and magic. So the races that exist on the South Island are going to be a lot more inclusive than the ones in the Northern Island. Most of the animal races exist exclusively in the Northern Island. Most of them do. But in the Southern Island, you have Dragonborn. You've got Gith. You've got demi-humans, dwarves, elves, humans. Humans make up the vast majority of the population in the Southern Island. But anything in between, half of any of those exist. So it is all up to you.
Yeah.
All up to
there's
you.
also kind of a political struggle happening on the South Island that doesn't really exist on the North Island, because on the South Island there's just more people and more factions. So if you want to start thinking about the possibilities of there being some faction intrigue on the South Island and how that might play out, very Game of Thronesy type stuff, that might help as far as inspiring you to throw out an NPC for the South Island. Fat elf innkeeper that is a bit too forthcoming with information that may or may not be completely correct. So that pretty much every innkeeper NPC that's ever been created. Oh, rumors. I got rumors for you. Here you go.
A spy of one faction infiltrating another. Make a new Jorel-inspired character for the South. An ultra-political activist like Britta from Community.
I don't know Britta from Community.
Very, very. I like Britta a lot. She's a good character, but especially her political activism comes off as ridiculous because it's extreme behaviors to things that's not going to solve the problem. But they are still very outspoken and extreme viewpoints that are designed to make a point about a political thing. So.
I mean, this is an NPC that we're probably not going to see for a while because they're going to start in the North Island and work their way.
Royal scientists trying to usurp their boss. I like that one a lot.
Okay.
That
you
fits
wanted to go that route?
Yeah, let's stick with royal scientist climbing the ladder.
So JT Justice. Okay. Royal scientist
wanting to climb the ladder.
Trying to climb the ladder. Trying to climb. Is this a political ladder or a social ladder or both?
Political ladder. Political ladder.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're a royal scientist, your job is politics. Right? Royal scientist.
Yeah. And I love the idea that science doesn't necessarily have to mean like science in the modern sense. Science could be arcane science.
Knowledge of things that are not yet new knowledge is really what I imagined that to be, the scientist in that. Yeah. Someone studying new things.
Danip71 says, how about an inspiring scholar that wishes to gain political power and using his scholarly prowess? So we'll say that he's a scholar because he's a scientist. So scholar can be his background.
Cool.
Which makes sense. I mean,
Phil Waffle says, can the scientist be super hot? Which is not the usual stereotype. LOL. Ooh, shots fired against scientist. Dang. Long hair, calm voice.
Why does Fail Waffle want everyone to be super hot?
I don't know.
Okay. All right.
Just Jules. Please don't ever change.
Okay. So I'm gonna hold off on getting to stats because we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
So is this a he or a she?
More, yeah.
Is this a he or a she?
I like the idea of a she. I like this being a she for sure.
Okay.
But I also want I want some mannerism. I think the same that you did with the red is a good one. Mannerism or physical manifestation that identifies this particular female royal scientist.
Okay. So something that she either physically does or something that affects her looks.
Yes.
Maybe it's the way she dresses. Maybe it's her hair. Maybe
or the color. Lack of, maybe it's a lack of dress comparative to their peers. It could be a variety of things. Meaning like they wear less formal clothes when everyone else wears more formal clothes.
By the way, chat, when we're spitballing this stuff, you can throw any idea you have rolling around inside your head.
Absolutely.
In
Witchface says gender neutral elf innkeeper and let all characters hit on them. Love that. Love it.
Okay, let's stick with the one character. Royal scientist trying to climb political ladder, scholar background, educated. It's a female. We still need a mannerism or
Idaho Judge says always stands uncomfortably close.
Okay.
Doesn't know their own personal.
A close talker?
Yeah, I like that a lot actually. Especially for someone who's intellectual, like it doesn't occur to them like you're too close to me right now.
I also like Idaho Judd says whispers. So I'm going to say that the reason why she's a close talker is because she whispers a lot of things. She doesn't talk too loudly. And it's interesting to me that she's trying to climb a political ladder, but she's not super loud about it. Like she's doing it behind the scenes.
Well,
she's
and
doing
I think
it,
that gives us
in a sneaky way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives us a little bit of ways to play with that too, because maybe it's not, maybe this particular political system is not based on how loud and how well you make a point. Maybe it's more based on how succinctly and efficiently you can prove a thing, for example.
Sure.
So someone who whispers, somebody who's close talker and whispers, they may be able to prove things very well, and that means their political power will grow.
So Hin Hanska, and she always has her arms crossed behind her back when she leans in close. I like that. So she's not like touching people when she's whispering. She's very respectful, but she's still getting very close and whispering. Okay, cool. I'll do that.
Mm-hmm. And Just Jules says I love that you brought this up, Just Jules. When someone whispers, people have to be quiet to hear them. Correct. I use this with my kids all the time. Yep.
Okay.
If you're soft-spoken, people are like, wait, what? We
still don't have, I love all the physical mannerisms, by the way. I can already picture this girl. We still don't have a race. Do we care?
I don't know that we care. That we care. I think that'll fit for what we need. I don't think in this case we necessarily care what their race is.
Okay, so we'll leave the race a mystery and decide that later when we need to. Okay. Indeed. Okay, I have a question. She's educated.
Yes.
She's some form of scientist,
Yes.
whether that's arcane science or some other kind of science, like, maybe she's a artificer or whatever.
Right.
Where did she get her education? What kind of education did she get?
Well, I assumed that if based on that she's a royal scientist, that her education is probably given by the kingdom or offered to her as by part of the kingdom.
So
Maybe
does that mean that
lineage.
she's nobility?
I would imagine if you're a royal scientist, you either have to have been noble or are coming, and maybe that's it. Maybe she wasn't of noble birth, and that this particular kingdom, through their science and gaining of knowledge, allows those individuals who are not born into nobility to rise into nobility.
Okay, that would argue then that the town that she's in is okay with that. They're okay with people climbing a political ladder that they're not born
into. Absolutely. Okay. I think, again, if you tie it again to the idea of what they can prove as their worth politically, then that would be the case in that kind of environment, I believe.
So she's had to prove herself.
Correct. Through experimentation or through their work and their knowledge. So through an academy.
Well, even just to get the education is what I'm saying.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So she's tenacious.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay.
Tenacious is a great one.
Okay. Tenacious. I need to know, chat, and I'd like you to vote on this. Is she a scientist in the sense to where she is working with technology, or is she a scientist in the sense to where she's using arcane magic? I would love for you to decide that. So vote between those two, either tech or magic. I got one vote for magic. Mix.
Dixie Justice says mix. Tech magic. 2 magic, 1 tech. 3 magic, 1 tech. Tech magic is a mix, so lots of somebody said alchemy specifically. Lots of tech and arcane. Tech.
Pretty big mix.
Mix, yeah.
Okay, so there are some people saying both. There are also some people saying there are equal amounts of tech and magic. So I'm going to say that it's a mix of the two.
Tech and magic.
Great. Yeah. So the science that she studied and the science that she is active in is a mixture of technology and magic combined. It's not just one or the other. It's not pure. Okay. Fun.
Yeah, cool.
That's very cool. All right. So we've already gone way over on our time.
Yes, we have.
So the two things that I would like to do now is name these two characters. I need a male sounding name, and a female sounding name. The male is Ramhidi from the north.
Hanska was on the ball with that. Capre Pertinax and Gloria Titch.
Okay. I like both of those.
David Genpro says Sharamate Yavane Jintadra Shura. Billy for the Ramhidi. Billy for the Ramhidi.
It's not a goat. I'm kidding. I'd like to do a mix. Why don't we do I like the Capre Pertinax.
I do like Capre Pertinax.
The Ramhidi.
I do.
I don't know if they necessarily have last names, but I'm going to write that down for now.
That could be part of their personality. They decided to adopt a last name.
Yeah. I'm gonna write down Capre Pertinax for now, and we might use just the Capre, but I definitely
Will
like
Meister
that
says
name
Ba Ramu.
Wellmeister,
Tim,
you're hilarious.
Just Tim,
of course. Okay, so Jitendra Shura for the
I like you know what, I like Jitendra Titch.
Jitendra Titch.
I like that a lot, actually.
Jitendra Titch. Okay. And we can do shortened versions, like maybe she just goes by Titch or Miss Titch or Jit or something like that. Maybe her friends call her Jit, Okay. Okay, so we got Capre Pertinax for the Ramhidi and Jitendra Titch for Jitendra Titch. Sounds very much like a scientist.
Yeah. Yep. And I agree with Fail Waffle here. Titch is super cute.
Okay. Miss Titch.
Miss Titch.
Cool. Fun. That was fun.
Witchbase, you're calling me out. Why are you calling me out? You just want to make JLP fall over in pronouncing the names wrong. Yes. Correct.
Okay,
Anything
so
for comedic and entertainment.
just to reiterate, because this is going to show up at some point in season 2, the North Island character, shaman, probably druidic, troublemaker, outlier, doesn't like to follow the general rules when it comes to, a peaceful existence. Ramhidi, not necessarily a shepherd yet because they're young. Their identifying physical behavior or physical mark is that they have a broken horn or a lost horn. High charisma, so they're well-spoken and passionate. They do have that injury on their head, whether it's the horn or their face as well, and a scar. And the name is Capre Pertinax, maybe just Capre.
Great.
Okay, so that's North Island. South Island, royal scientist, trying to climb a political ladder, a scholar background, educated. She had to prove herself. It is a female. Mannerisms is that she's a close talker or a whisperer with very little personal space. The race is up in the air. I'm thinking human, but maybe a mix. Hands behind her back, very respectful. She's not like, grabbing onto people when she's getting super close. Tenacious. She studied a mixture of technology and magic combined, and her name is Jatendra Titch, or Miss Titch.
Actually, I do like her like half. I do like her maybe half human, or maybe a tiefling or an ASMR would fit.
Okay.
Too.
Okay. I'll write down human ? Maybe half something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so those were just 2 NPCs that you, Dr. Titch, I like that. Those are 2 NPCs that you helped us make. And I already see them in my mind. I could describe them. I could probably even come up with a voice and jump into a scene. And that only took us, what, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to do this?
We did 2 of them in 15. We did 2 of them in 15.
Yeah. And this isn't all the work that you need to do for just a basic shopkeeper or someone that's, like a baker or what have you. These are NPCs that are actually going to significantly affect, or probably significantly affect, the storyline, or at least they're going to be heavily involved. The only other thing that we would need to do, and this is something that Ron and I are going to have to do on our own, is come up with stats and come up with what they have on them, so that if something were to occur, like let's say they get in a fight with Miss Titch, we know what she's capable of. Okay? That's it. That's creating NPCs 101. If you have more questions, or if there's any other subject or topic that you would like us to discuss on Arcane Artistry, thank you, Carson. I see your bits.
Thank you, Carson.
Let us know. Write to us. Write to us on Discord. Write to us on Patreon. We do have a new episode of Fortune and Fate coming up in 2 days, Wednesday. I'll be joining that.
I will also be there.
As your adorable red panda.
Yeah, it's been a little time since I've played Red. It's time to get back to him.
Cool. And I let you guys vote on what I was going to be playing, and it was neck and neck between the Goblin Ranger Swarmkeeper and the Bugbear Druid Circle of Spores. Neck and neck. At the very, very end, the Bugbear Druid College of Spores won out. Surprisingly, because it started out Goblin. But there were some people that jumped in later on that said Bugbear. So that's who I'm going to be playing, Stropharia, on Wednesday. So I'm very much looking forward to joining the chaos. We're also going to have a special guest. Yeah. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I forgot how to pronounce his last name now again.
Cassell. Yeah. We're hoping that's a pronunciation.
Yes. Jalen Cassell will be joining us on Wednesday, playing a Owlkin. Did I get that right?
An Owlkin, Wizard of the Scribes.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah. He wrote a whole backstory for his character. He's super excited. He's somebody that I met doing a board game stream, and he's also a voiceover actor and huge in the anime world. So if you do a search for Jalen K. Cassell, you'll find all of his anime stuff. He's also just a really smart, cool guy. So we're looking forward to playing some D&D with him on Wednesday. Everyone's debating on my last name. Okay, so my last name, this will be the last thing that
Can I tell you? Can I tell you what I think your last name's pronounced?
Sure.
It's Czech.
Yeah, it is.
Hey!
Yeah. Technically, my last name is Czech. That's how everybody in my family pronounces it. However, I've been in this industry for so long, and everybody looks at me like I'm crazy when I say Czech. This is what happens, Fail Waffle. I'll say, hi, my name's Jared Czech. And then they'll spend the next 5, 10, 20 minutes of whatever audition I'm doing, doesn't matter how long it is, looking at my name and then wondering how that is pronounced Czech. And they won't listen to anything else I say or do. So what I started doing, this was way back in my theater days, is I started introducing myself as Jared Kajak, because everybody can wrap their brain around that and remember it for whatever reason. And so that's why I say Jared Kajak, because I guess that's just my industry name. Yeah, so there you go. Now you know. Check baby. And that's our show, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for joining us today. I had a blast. It was fun.
It's always a blast hanging out with you, dude. It's always hanging and creating with you. It's a lot of fun. With our audience as well, of course. All of you really add a lot to this particular program. So thank you all for showing up. And once again, thank you to all of our patrons. If you would like to join our patrons, you can do so at patreon.com/thedungeonrun. We have a variety of tiers with a variety of benefits, including merch,
deciding what character I get to play.
Deciding what character that Jared gets to play. Questions that are asked on shows like this. And more to come as we continue into season 2. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Ron Ogden.
I'm Jared Kajak.
This has been the Dungeon Cooldown or Check. This has been the Dungeon Cooldown. We'll see you next week. And until then, humankind, be both.
Be both. Mwah.
Stick around. We'll be rating one of our friends very shortly.
Sweet. Oh, thanks.